I called my parents to say my wife had died in an accident and my son was in the ICU. But it's your sister's birthday, they said. I quietly cut them off. A week later, they showed up demanding 50% of the settlement money. Hey Reddit, I've been thinking about posting this for months. It's been almost a year since everything went sideways, but I need to get this out there because it was so messed up that even now I can barely believe it actually happened. I'm Sean, 32, male, a carpenter doing custom residential work around Phoenix. Good trade, solid money. Built everything from wine cellars for rich clients in Scottsdale to custom cabinets that cost more than most people's cars. My wife, Nora, was 29, taught 3rd grade at the local elementary. One of those teachers kids actually remember, always had some story about her students that would crack me up over dinner. Then there's Zoan, our 7-year-old. Smart kid, already kicking my butt at chess and had this laugh just like his mom's. We were that couple that didn't hate each other after 7 years. Movie nights on Fridays, pancake battles on Sundays, all that boring stuff that seems pointless until it's gone. Nora would bust my chops when I got too worked up about Owen's Little League games. I'd give her grief about crying at Disney movies. Normal stuff. Now my family, they've been treating me like their personal bank for as long as I can remember. Dad bounces between warehouse jobs. Mom cleans houses when she can find work. They live paycheck to paycheck in a place that should have been condemned years ago. My younger sister, Jessica, 28, female, lives with them. Works part-time at some boutique while chasing her dream of becoming an influencer. For over a decade, I've been the family backbone. Rent short? Call Sean. Car dies? Call Sean. Jessica blows her credit cards on designer knockoffs and ring lights for her content? That's right. Call Sean. I covered it all because that's what you do, right? Had to be the responsible one since nobody else was stepping up. Last bailout was just 2 months before the accident. Nora used to call me out on it. Babe, you're not their dad, she'd say when I'd stress about another emergency transfer. But she didn't push too hard because she knew I felt guilty about being the one who got his life together. March started normal. I was at a job site in Scottsdale installing custom kitchen cabinets when my phone rang. Unknown number. Almost let it go to voicemail. Is this Sean Sterling? Yeah. Who's this? This is Sergeant Herrera with Phoenix PD. Sir, there's been an accident involving your wife and son. You need to get here right now. Everything just stopped. I remember dropping my tools, watching my expensive router clatter across the marble floor and thinking stupidly that I should probably pick that up. Sir, are you still there? What kind of accident? Vehicle collision. Your wife's car got hit by another driver. Sir, your wife was pronounced dead at the scene. Your son's in critical condition. Don't remember driving to the hospital. Don't remember parking. My buddy Mike found me 20 minutes later sitting in my truck in the ER lot. Engine still running, just staring at nothing. Mike's been my best friend since college. We played ball together at ASU before I blew out my knee. He's not the touchy-feely type. When stuff hits the fan, Mike just handles business. No questions, just solutions. Give me your keys, he said, opening my truck door. I'm driving. Inside, some doctor walked me through it. Nora had picked Owen up early for a dentist appointment. At 2 p.m., some impaired driver named Kevin Walsh ran a red light at Madison and Central. Walsh was severely impaired. Blood results showed he was way over the legal limit. His F-150 slammed into Nora's Civic at high speed. My wife didn't survive the impact. Owen suffered serious injuries, brain trauma, broken bones, and internal injuries. He was in critical condition. We've put him in a medical coma to reduce brain swelling, the doctor said. The next 72 hours are critical. I sat in that sterile room listening to medical terms I didn't understand. And all I could think was that Owen had been excited about showing off his backstroke at swim practice. Now he might never wake up. That's when I called my parents. Mom picked up on the 4th ring. Background noise, music, people laughing, party sounds. Sean, you caught us right in the middle of Jessica's birthday thing. Everyone's here. Hang on, let me step outside so I can hear you better. I could hear her heels clicking, but the party noise didn't go away completely. Mom, listen. Nora's dead. Car accident. Owen's in a coma and they don't know if he's going to make it. Silence. Then, oh my God, Sean, that's horrible. I waited for her to say they were coming, that they'd drop everything and drive the 2 hours to Phoenix. Instead, honey, I'm so sorry but we can't leave right now. It's Jessica's birthday party. We rented out the whole back room at Romano's. Everyone's here, her work friends, Tanner, all our relatives. The cake alone cost a fortune, and we already paid for everyone's meals. It would be super rude to just bail on the party. I pulled the phone away and stared at it, thinking I'd misheard. Mom, my wife is dead. Your grandson might die tonight. I know, sweetheart, and we're all sorry, but Jessica's been planning this party for months. It's her golden birthday, 28 on the 28th, and she said it's the most important birthday of her life. Plus, Tanner's parents are here meeting everyone for the first time. You understand, right? We'll drive down first thing tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. Well, maybe tomorrow afternoon. Your father has that interview with the county, and we can't afford for him to miss it. Plus, Jessica wants to do brunch with Tanner to recover from her celebration and open presents, but we'll be there as soon as we can. The call ended with promises they didn't keep, and this sick feeling in my stomach. Mike showed up in the waiting room with coffee and In-N-Out. Somehow, he'd already contacted Nora's parents in Colorado, got them flights arranged, and called my boss about emergency leave, all while I sat there in shock. Your folks coming? He asked, settling into the plastic chair next to me. Jessica's birthday party, I said. Mike just nodded. He'd dealt with my family enough to know the score. Next 3 days were a blur. Owen had 2 emergency surgeries to relieve pressure on his brain. I slept in a recliner next to his bed, listening to machines keeping him alive, watching monitors that meant the difference between my son living or dying. Nora's parents flew in and took shifts with me, bringing food I couldn't eat, and handling funeral arrangements I couldn't face. My parents called twice. Once for updates, once to say they'd definitely visit early next week after Dad's interview and Jessica's post-birthday brunch with Tanner. They didn't show early next week or late next week. Meanwhile, Mike basically moved into my house, made sure bills got paid, lawn got mowed, Owen's room stayed ready. He organized guys from our crew to cover hospital visits so I could shower and sleep in a real bed occasionally. Solid backup from people who actually cared. Day 6, Owen's eyes opened just for a few seconds. Confused and unfocused, but definitely conscious. I cried harder than I had since Nora died, holding his hand and telling him Daddy was there. The doctor said waking up was just step 1. Brain injuries were unpredictable. Could be memory loss, cognitive problems, personality changes, but my son was alive and that was enough. Owen's recovery was brutal. This kid who used to destroy me at chess couldn't remember basic shapes. He'd look at me with confused, scared eyes, sometimes knowing who I was, sometimes not. The left side of his body was weak from the brain damage. So, holding a spoon or walking straight became major victories. Speech therapy 3 times a week because he'd lost chunks of vocabulary. Physical therapy for motor control. The works. I sat in on every session, taking notes, learning the exercises so I could work with him at home. Turned our living room into a mini therapy center. Hospital bills started piling up like crazy. Even after insurance, we were looking at numbers that made you sick thinking about them. The ICU stay alone was pushing 6 figures. The rehab facility wanted thousands per month. Specialized equipment, home modifications, tutoring. It added up to the kind of money that keeps you awake at night doing math on a calculator at 3 a.m. That's when Jeffrey Park called. Mike's cousin recommended Jeffrey for personal injury cases. The guy knew how to work impaired driving settlements and had a reputation for making insurance companies pay. Mr. Sterling, he said at our first meeting, I've looked at everything. Kevin Walsh has a history. 2 prior incidents, suspended license twice, and he was driving uninsured despite court orders. The vehicle belonged to his employer, though, and their commercial policy has a multi-million-dollar liability limit. I'd never even thought about that much money. Heck, I'd never seen a check with more than 4 zeros on it. Given your wife's death and your son's injuries, Jeffrey continued, plus Walsh's clear pattern of negligence, the insurance company wants to settle fast. They can't afford a jury trial where an impaired driver killed a teacher and brain damaged a 7-year-old. The initial offer came back substantial. Jeffrey said we could push for more, but honestly, it was already more than I could process. Enough to cover Owen's care forever. Enough so he'd never want for anything. I mentioned the settlement to my parents during one of their weekly check-ins. Didn't say how much, just that things looked good financially and we wouldn't stress about medical bills. Response was immediate. Oh, thank God, Mom said. We've been so worried about the financial burden. These things can destroy families if they're not handled right. What do you mean? Well, you'll need help managing that kind of money. Your father knows quite a bit about investments and financial planning. We should all sit down once things are settled. My father, who'd blown through an inheritance from his own dad in months on a fishing boat he used twice, was offering investment advice. But I let it slide. Too exhausted to fight and honestly just grateful Owen was improving. Settlement cleared on a Tuesday in early June. Jeffrey structured it perfectly. Most went into a medical trust for Owen that I couldn't touch except for approved expenses, with enough liquid for immediate needs and household expenses. Smart, safe, exactly what Nora would have wanted. Called my parents that evening with a simple update. "Sean, that's wonderful," Mom practically shouted. "We need to celebrate. Why don't we all come down this weekend? You don't need to make a special trip. Owen still got therapy, and we're trying to keep his routine stable." "Oh, this isn't just about celebrating," Dad jumped in. Must have been on speaker. "We need to discuss the family situation. These settlements involve a lot of considerations."
"What do you mean?"
"Well," Mom said, "family support structures. Making sure everyone's taken care of during recovery. Jessica's been having such a hard time since her birthday. Realizing she's almost 30 with nothing to show for it really hit her hard. And your father's been having back problems."
There it was.
Should have seen it coming from a mile away. "The settlement is for Owen's medical care."
"Of course," Dad said.
"But these awards are typically much larger than actual medical expenses. There's compensation for emotional distress, family suffering, loss of consortium. It's not all earmarked for medical bills." The idea of my parents getting a piece of that made me physically sick. "We'll talk when you visit," I said, ending the call.
"This weekend then," Mom said.
"We'll drive down Saturday morning." They actually showed up, all three of them, Mom, Dad, and Jessica, rolling up in Dad's beat-up Chevy like some discount intervention team. Mom had a casserole and her church purse. Dad carried a manila folder thick with papers that looked suspiciously official. Jessica was scrolling through her phone like this was a massive inconvenience. Owen was napping upstairs, still getting tired from therapy. Mike was over, helping me install safety rails in the bathroom. "Sean," Mom swept in with air kisses that didn't actually make contact. "The house looks good, considering everything." "Mike," Dad nodded stiffly.
Never liked Mike.
Probably because Mike saw through their nonsense and wasn't shy about calling it out. "Mr. and Mrs. Sterling," Mike replied neutrally.
"Jessica."
Jessica didn't even look up from her phone. "Yeah, hey, can we make this quick?
"I've got actual plans tonight."
We sat in the living room. Dad opened his manila folder like he was conducting a business meeting. "Sean, we've been researching settlement distributions," he began, checking his notes. "Typically, these awards include compensation for the entire family's emotional suffering." "The entire family?" Mike asked from the kitchen doorway. He wasn't supposed to be part of this, but I was glad he stayed close. Mom shot Mike an annoyed look. "This is family business, Mike." "Mike stays," I said. "He's been more family to me these past few months than anyone else." That hit home, but Mom pushed forward with that fake smile. "What your father means is we've all been affected by this tragedy. The stress, the emotional trauma, the financial impact of traveling back and forth, taking time off work."
I almost laughed.
They'd visited 3 times in 4 months, and taking time off work meant Dad calling in sick to his part-time warehouse gig. "Here's what we're thinking," Dad continued, pulling out what looked like a typed document. "Obviously, Owen's needs are a priority, but there should be provision for family support and recovery. We're proposing a 50-50 split. Half goes to Owen's trust, which makes sense given his injuries. The other half gets distributed among family members to help everyone rebuild."
The room went dead quiet. "Rebuild from what?" I asked.
"Well," Jessica spoke up for the first time. "The emotional trauma affects everyone, and there are practical considerations. I need to get my life together before I'm 30. This whole thing has been super stressful. I've barely been able to focus on my content creation because of all the family drama." She finally looked up, rolling her eyes. "Plus, let's be real, Nora would probably want her family taken care of, right? I mean, if she actually cared about family." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Mike went completely still. Even my parents looked shocked. "What did you just say?" I asked quietly. Jessica shrugged like she hadn't just insulted my dead wife. "I'm just saying, if Nora was such a great person, like everyone keeps acting like, she would have wanted everyone supported. She always thought she was better than us anyway with her teaching job and her perfect little house and her perfect little family."
"Jessica," Mom said sharply. "That's enough."
"Is it though? She never liked us, never wanted Sean to help the family. Always made these passive-aggressive comments about enabling and boundaries. Maybe if she'd been more supportive of family, Sean wouldn't." "Watch your damn mouth," I cut her off. This 28-year-old woman living in my parents' basement was talking trash about my dead wife. Say one more word about Nora, and I will make you regret it. Okay, son. Dad jumped in quickly, trying to defuse the bomb Jessica had just dropped. The way we see it, approximately half would go to family support. Jessica would get a substantial portion to establish herself properly. Your mother and I would take. What about Nora's parents? Mom looked confused. What about them? Well, they're not blood relatives anymore, Dad said matter-of-factly. With Nora gone, they're essentially unrelated. Mike made a choking sound. They've been here every week, I said. They covered Owen's therapy when I couldn't be there. That's nice, Mom said in that condescending tone I remembered from childhood. But we're talking about practical considerations. Jessica snorted. Nora's parents are loaded anyway. They don't need help like we do. I looked at these three people in my living room, in the house I'd shared with my dead wife, making plans to cash in on her death while insulting her memory. I'll think about this, I said.
Of course, Mom beamed.
But we should move quickly. You don't want that kind of money just sitting around unmanaged. They stayed another hour. When Owen woke up and came downstairs, they fussed over him for exactly 5 minutes before getting back to financial planning. Jessica even tried to get him to pose for a selfie with Auntie, but gave up when he was too confused and tired to smile. Right. After they left, Mike and I sat in the kitchen having coffee and listening to Owen play video games. They're going to push this hard, Mike said. Yeah. You know what you're going to do? I watched Owen through the doorway. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, I said. Next week, I started documenting everything. Phone calls, texts, emails, building a record of exactly what they were doing. Mom called daily with ideas about the settlement. Dad sent printouts of investment strategies he'd found online. Jessica's texts were the worst, though. Constant complaints about her life mixed with hints about needing money. Mom says you're being stubborn about sharing. Nora probably would have been more generous. She was always trying to prove she was the better person, lol. I also kept 2 photos from my phone, pictures I'd taken for insurance and Owen's medical records. One showed the reality of our loss. The other showed Owen during his most critical period in the hospital, unconscious and connected to medical equipment. Probably shouldn't have kept those pictures, but something about them felt important. These weren't abstract concepts or insurance numbers. This was reality. While my family celebrated Jessica's birthday, Jeffrey had warned me about family pressure once settlement amounts became known. Unfortunately, sudden wealth brings out the worst in people. Even families can develop unrealistic expectations about funds designated for medical care. No kidding, Jeffrey. I called my parents the following Saturday. Told them I was ready for a serious conversation about the settlement. Could they come over that evening? Owen would be at his first sleepover since the accident, another milestone, so we could talk freely.
Oh, wonderful, Mom gushed.
Your father's been working on projections that'll be very helpful. They showed up at 7 p.m. sharp with backup. Jessica and some guy in a cheap suit who turned out to be a financial advisor Mom had somehow convinced to attend this mess. The financial advisor, Kevin something, looked uncomfortable from the start, kept glancing around like he expected hidden cameras or wanted to make sure he knew where the exits were. See, Mom began, settling into Nora's favorite chair without asking. We're so proud of how you've handled this. Takes real maturity to recognize family support is crucial during times like these. Dad had prepared an actual presentation. Pulled out poster board with pie charts showing how the money could be distributed. As you can see, he explained, pointing at different wedges like he was presenting quarterly earnings. This distribution ensures everyone's needs are met while maintaining Owen's primary trust. The financial advisor was studying the charts with growing horror, probably realizing he'd been dragged into some kind of family extortion scheme. Jessica's portion, Dad continued, would establish her properly. I've learned a lot about myself since my birthday, Jessica added, clearly coached, but unable to hide her attitude. Your mother and I would use our portion for essential medical care, my back surgery, her dental work, plus retirement security. We've sacrificed so much over the years, helping you through college, supporting the family. The family that had bailed me out exactly 0 times in 15 years while I covered their bills constantly. The financial advisor finally spoke. I have to say, this is unusual. Settlement funds are typically managed by the primary beneficiary according to court structures. We understand the legal technicalities, Dad interrupted, waving his hand like the guy was being difficult. But this is about family values. Family support during tragedy. You're right, I said. This is about family values. Mom's face lit up like Christmas morning. I knew you'd see reason. Before we discuss specifics, I want everyone to understand exactly what we're talking about. I pulled out the first photo and placed it on the coffee table in front of the pie charts. The room went dead silent. This represents our loss, I said, watching their faces. This is what happened while you were celebrating Jessica's birthday. Mom gasped and looked away. Dad went pale. The financial advisor stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he stammered. This seems like a private matter.
I should go.
He practically ran for the door, leaving his business cards scattered on the table. I placed the second photo next to the first. And this is the other 50%. This is Owen in the pediatric ICU, fighting for his life while you were too busy to visit. Jessica stared at the photos, all that manufactured attitude evaporating for the first time since she'd walked in. She looked genuinely uncomfortable. This is what you want a percentage of. This is what you think you're entitled to. My wife's death and my son's brain injury. And Jessica, this is what you've been talking trash about while texting me. Jessica had gone completely white.
Sean, I didn't mean. You meant every word.
You've been insulting my dead wife. The silence was deafening. Now get out of my house, I said. All of you, don't ever come back. They left without another word, abandoning the pie charts and business cards on my coffee table. I gathered them up and threw the whole pile in the fireplace, then sat in the dark, thinking about Nora and what she would have said about this mess.
She would have been heartbroken, but not surprised. Some bridges are meant to burn.
Thought that would end it.
I was wrong.
Within 48 hours, my phone started blowing up. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't talked to in years. Suddenly, everyone was an expert on family loyalty and financial responsibility. My parents had spun it as me refusing to help family in their time of need. Uncle Pete left a voicemail calling me a selfish jerk who forgot where he came from. Aunt Danielle texted saying Nora would be ashamed of my behavior. Cousin Jeff, who I'd bailed out of bankruptcy 3 years back, had the nerve to lecture me about family obligations in a Facebook message. But the real campaign started when they realized I wasn't answering calls. Jessica's harassment was the worst. She'd moved from subtle insults to outright vicious attacks on Nora, probably figuring she had nothing left to lose. She started posting on social media about family members who think they're better than everyone else and people who die and suddenly become saints even though they were jerks in life. Anyone who knew our family understood exactly who she meant. The breaking point was when she showed up at Owen's school trying to pick him up without authorization. The principal called me at work Thursday afternoon. "Mr. Sterling, your sister was here trying to pick up Owen. She said there was a family emergency, but Owen didn't seem to know her very well and became upset. We followed protocol and didn't release him, but I thought you should know." I drove to the school immediately. Owen was in the office looking confused and scared. When he saw me, he burst into tears. Jessica had been under the influence at 2 p.m. on a Thursday and tried to kidnap my son. I called the police from the school parking lot, filed a report for attempted kidnapping, and made sure they understood Jessica was not authorized to have any contact with Owen. Got a restraining order filed the same day. But her social media campaign got worse. She started posting long rants about narcissistic family members and dead people who get worshipped just because they're gone. She posted old photos of Nora from family gatherings with captions like, "Some people act sweet in public but are manipulative behind closed doors." Meanwhile, my parents had started showing up in places they thought I'd be. Dad waited outside Owen's physical therapy session, trying to approach me in the parking lot. Mom called the therapy center, claiming to be Owen's emergency contact and asking about his progress. They kept trying to insert themselves into our lives like nothing had happened. The harassment got bad enough I had to involve lawyers. Jeffrey sent cease and desist letters spelling out exactly what would happen if they kept trying to contact me or Owen. Threats of restraining orders and stalking charges finally got their attention, but the damage was done. The extended family had picked sides, and most chose the version where I was the selfish jerk keeping money from people who helped raise me. Jessica's campaign had poisoned half my relatives against Nora's memory. The saddest part, I felt nothing watching it happen. No guilt, no satisfaction, just empty acknowledgement that they'd shown their true colors. I was already exhausted. Owen was thriving though. Speech was almost back to normal, motor skills improving daily, he'd started cracking jokes again. When he finally beat me at chess for the first time since the accident, took him 3 months to get back to that level. I let him stay up an extra hour, and we ordered Chinese food to celebrate. I'd also been working on myself. Started hitting the gym, eating better, even began dating again. Nothing serious, just remembering I was still a person outside of being Owen's dad and caretaker. Nora would have wanted me to live, not just survive. The settlement money was doing exactly what it should, ensuring Owen got the best care while securing his future. Physical therapy, speech therapy, cognitive rehab, specialized tutoring, everything he needed to recover as fully as possible. Life was actually getting good again, which made what happened next even more infuriating. Here's what my family never understood about being the responsible one. When you stop enabling destructive behavior, people face the natural consequences of their choices. And Jessica's situation deteriorated rapidly. First domino was her complete social media meltdown. The restraining order had cut off her access to Owen and me. So, she doubled down on the online harassment. Started posting increasingly unhinged rants about Nora, calling her everything from a fake person to worse things I won't repeat. That last post included a photo of Nora from our wedding with devil horn emojis drawn on.
Real classy stuff.
The problem was Phoenix isn't that big a city. People who knew Nora, her fellow teachers, parents from Owen's school, our neighbors started seeing Jessica's posts. Screenshots got shared. Local community Facebook groups picked it up. Suddenly, Jessica's campaign to destroy Nora's reputation was backfiring hard.
Her boutique job disappeared first.
The store owner got flooded with calls from customers who'd seen the posts and didn't want someone who attacked dead mothers representing their business. Then her Instagram got reported and suspended for harassment.
Her TikTok followed.
All those years building her brand gone in a week. But the real karma bomb was still coming. Tanner's parents had been following the whole mess on social media. Rich folks in Tucson, the kind who Googled their son's girlfriends and monitored their social media presence. They'd already been concerned about Jessica's financial instability and family drama. Seeing her publicly attack a dead woman while trying to extort money from the widower was apparently the last straw. Tanner's mom called Tanner. Tanner called Jessica. And the conversation was brutal. Screenshots of her posts got sent to his whole family. The engagement ring went back to Tanner's grandmother. Wedding plans were cancelled. But here's where it gets beautiful. Tanner's dad was a partner at a mid-sized law firm in Tucson. He'd been planning to offer Jessica an entry-level position at their office as a wedding gift, help her get started in a real career. That obviously wasn't happening now. Instead, he made some phone calls around Phoenix, let other firms know there was a woman named Jessica Sterling who'd publicly harassed a dead accident victim and tried to extort settlement money. Made sure her name was flagged in HR systems across the city. Suddenly, she couldn't get hired anywhere decent. Every application led to a Google search that showed her harassment campaign. Entry-level office jobs, retail positions, even fast food. Nobody wanted the liability of employing someone who'd proven she'd attack grieving families on social media. She tried changing her name on applications, but social media posts are permanent. Screenshots lived forever. Her face was attached to those horrible comments about Nora, and people had good memories. By August, she was completely unemployable. Living with my parents full-time, no income, no prospects, watching her social media accounts dwindle as people unfollowed the crazy woman who attacked dead mothers. Her influencer dreams were dead, her reputation destroyed, her future ruined. The personal issues got worse. Day drinking turned into serious problems. First incident in September, lost her license and got mandatory counseling. The second incident in November led to legal consequences and court-ordered treatment. My parents couldn't afford the legal fees. Meanwhile, my parents discovered what life looked like without their monthly Sean bailout. Dad's back surgery got postponed indefinitely. Couldn't afford the deductible. Mom took on extra cleaning jobs to cover basics. Working for rich ladies in Scottsdale who paid her to scrub toilets while their kids went to private schools. 3 adults with no money, no prospects, growing desperation. Jessica blamed everyone else for her problems. Nora for turning me against family. Me for abandoning blood relatives. Tanner for being classist. Never once did she take responsibility. The family social media campaign backfired, too. When you publicly air your financial desperation while attacking dead accident victims, people avoid you instead of helping. Church friends, neighbors, extended family. Everyone got real busy when my parents came around looking for handouts. By winter, they were facing eviction. 30 days to come up with back rent or find somewhere else to crash. That's when real desperation kicked in. And my sister, with serious problems, unemployable, and facing homelessness, decided to make one last desperate play. December 20th, almost 9 months after the accident, Jessica showed up at my door alone. Not with my parents this time, just her, looking like she'd been living in her car. She'd lost weight. Hair was greasy. Clothes were dirty. Hands were shaking. Classic rock bottom look, but her eyes still had that same entitled rage. Owen was at a Christmas party with his classmates. Another milestone in his recovery. The kid was doing so well the doctors were talking about clearing him for contact sports by middle school. None of which Jessica knew or cared about. "Sean," she said, swaying slightly on my porch.
"We need to talk."
"Nothing to talk about.
"Please."
But even her begging sounded angry. "Just 5 minutes." I let her in, kept her in the entryway though. She wasn't getting comfortable in my house again. "I messed up," she said without preamble. "The posts, the things I said about Nora. I was upset and angry, and I messed up."
"No kidding."
"But it wasn't all my fault. You cut us off with no warning. Left us to struggle while you sat on millions of dollars. Family doesn't do that to family."
There it was.
Even at rock bottom, she couldn't take full responsibility. Still had to blame me for their choices. "I posted those things because I was desperate. Because you abandoned us when we needed help."
Nora would understand. She was a teacher.
She knew how desperation makes people do crazy things. She'd forgive me for the posts because she'd know I was just hurting. She was compassionate like that, even if we had our differences. I stared at this pathetic woman in my entryway, still invoking my dead wife's name after spending months calling her horrible names on social media. "I'm just wondering, how do you still have the nerve to show me your face, Jessica?" Her face went red. I was desperate. People say stupid stuff when they're desperate. You know what it's like to lose everything. I lost my wife and almost lost my son. You lost your job because you disrespected my dead wife. It's not the same thing.
"You're right. It's not." She started crying.
"We're getting evicted next week. Mom's working 3 jobs, but it's not enough. Dad can't work because of his back. I can't get hired anywhere because of those screenshots.
"We need help."
"Too late," I said. "You have to leave now."
I didn't mean it.
I was angry about Tanner, about losing everything, and I took it out on her.
"But she's dead, Sean."
She can't be hurt by words anymore. We're alive, and we're suffering. That's when I understood how completely broken she was. "You want to know what Nora would really think about this?"
I asked.
Jessica nodded eagerly, probably thinking she'd finally found an angle that might work. "She'd think you're exactly the kind of person she tried to protect our family from. She'd think you attacking a dead mother while trying to profit from her child's brain injury proves she was right about your character. And she'd think Owen and I are better off without you in our lives." The hope died in her eyes, replaced by pure rage.
"Screw you, Sean."
"Screw you and your dead wife. She turned you into a selfish jerk." That's when I snapped. I grabbed her neck.
"Don't you dare."
Then I opened the door and shoved her out. "Get the hell out of here and never show up around me or my son, because if you do, I promise you I will make your life hell more than it already is." She looked like I'd slapped her. Stood there like a wounded dog. "You're really going to let family become homeless rather than share blood money?"
"Sean, you can't. Get out."
She left, screaming how karma would get me eventually. I watched her stumble to a beat-up Honda I didn't recognize, probably borrowed or stolen, and disappear into the night. 2 days later, Mike called with news. Jessica had been arrested for public intoxication and assault. Apparently, she'd gone to a bar after leaving my house, got belligerently intoxicated, and attacked a woman who looked like that witch teacher who stole my brother. Spent Christmas in jail. My parents, they tried to call for bail money. I didn't answer. They showed up at my office on New Year's Eve, looking like they'd aged 10 years in 10 months. Security escorted them out. Last I heard, they'd moved in with my aunt in Flagstaff, sleeping on couches and working odd jobs. Jessica was in a court-ordered rehab program, facing assault charges, and still unemployable. Her social media accounts were deactivated, her influencer dreams dead, her reputation permanently destroyed. She destroyed her own life, and I felt nothing but satisfaction watching it happen. Owen's doing amazing now. Full recovery, the doctors say. Still some minor motor skill issues, but his brain is basically healed. Mike checks on us every day. Nora's parents call weekly to talk to Owen. That's what family looks like. Some people don't deserve forgiveness, no matter how much they suffer.